Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live show this afternoon. We're having a conversation and we're discussing dealing with financial abuse in a relationship. Our topic today in this month of love is on financial abuse. When most people think of domestic abuse, the first thing that they come to their mind is likely verbal abuse or physical abuse. But research shows that financial abuse occurs just as frequently as it happens in most relationships and as any other form of abuse. In fact, a study by the Centers of Financial Security found that 99% of domestic violence also involves financial abuse. If you have any questions, you can type in the comment section. If you have any comments that are relevant to what we are discussing this afternoon, you can also comment. You are also encouraged to share the video, tag a friend, invite a friend, so that we grow together. Atemba, as we usually do before we go into our topic today, are there any news that we wish to bring to attention for our viewers?
So I've been looking at financial news and everything that I see around us is very, very negative. So I don't want to bore our audience with negative news, Tafazo. As I was going through some of the business reports, there is news of companies planning to retrench. There is news of the unemployment rate going up, but I'm not going to focus on that. I just want to focus on two things. The first thing that I want to focus on is just encouraging our audience to identify opportunities, even when it looks like there's a lot of bad news, around. I just want to assure everyone that there are indeed lots of opportunities. For example, I got to understand in this week about a company called Home Energy. It's a South African company. They are actually thriving. I think in this week they were able to raise something like 8 million in startup funding from venture capitalists. They are capitalizing on the load shedding issues that South Africa has. And, they are a company that is focused in the energy sector. And, you might have seen, Tafazwa, that there is a boom in solar installations. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about this company is because they are looking at the load shedding problems that South Africa is having and they are seeing an opportunity. So that to me is an example of identifying opportunities in a world where there seemingly is a lot of bad news compared to the good news. Another issue that I would want to talk about is some of the defense companies in the world. I was just looking at stock prices of defense companies in the world. There's a company called Rheinmetall. Their stock price has gone up by 315%. They basically manufacture weapons. And since the war between Russia and Ukraine started, their stock price has just been going up. BAE Systems, their stock price has gone up by 105%. And there are quite a number of defense companies that, whose stock prices has gone up by, significant percentages, as well. So I guess what I'm trying to communicate, Tafadzwa, is number one, the time of maximum pessimism is a time to actually invest and look for opportunities. I would also want to encourage all our viewers not to focus so much on bad news that is, being projected in the press, but also to be on the lookout, for opportunities. I believe that during this time, we having billionaires being made, it's just a question of where do you focus most of your attention, on. The second thing that I would want to talk about is the budget that was presented in South Africa on Wednesday. So the Minister of Finance presented the annual budget for the country. Obviously, it was an election budget. The ANC government wasn't going to do things that are drastic, especially in an election year. But some of the things that may be of interest to our listeners and viewers is, number one, there were no adjustment to tax brackets. Typically, what happens with this budget announcement is that tax brackets are adjusted, with increases in inflation. What they try to do is that they try to cushion all of us from inflation by adjusting the tax brackets. That didn't happen this time around. And there is therefore every likelihood that even if you're going to get a salary increase at work, you might actually find yourself falling into a higher tax bracket and find yourself, paying more tax than you have been paying. So I just found that very, very, interesting. Obviously, the balance sheet of the country is not in a good shape. It looks like the country has been accumulating quite a lot of debt, and that has been a source of concern, there. I was also interested in the projected growth in the economy. So the economy is projected to grow by only 1.3% in this year, 1.6% next year, and 1.8%. Those GDP growth rates are not encouraging, especially if you consider that the population is growing at a faster rate than the single-digit growth rates there. And especially if you also consider that inflation is higher than the growth rates that are being, presented there. So again, it takes us back to what we've been saying, Tafadzwa. Let's not get depressed by the bad news. There are quite a lot of opportunities, around. And also, it's important that we take our financial destiny into our hands. We can't rely on governments to solve our problems. We have to take our financial destiny into our hands. Let me end there, Tafaz, so that we can move on to the topic for the day.
Thank you for that information on the financial budget. Themba, are there any recommendations today for the book that our audience can review?
Yes, I want to recommend two books, Tafadzwa, especially for couples. These are books by well-known writers, and these two books are available actually on Amazon. The first book that I would want to recommend is a book that I have read titled Financially Ever After, The Couple's Guide to Managing Money. It was written by, Jeff Opdyke. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname very, I hope I'm not butchering his surname. I haven't met him, although I have read, the book. The one thing that I liked about this book, Tafadzwa, is that he actually gives practical scenarios that couples may find themselves in as far as managing, money is concerned. And obviously he gives advice on how to navigate, around financial issues as a couple. Another book that I would want to recommend is also a global bestseller. It's a book that has been revised and updated. Smart Couples Finish Rich. The writer, David, Batch, talks about 9 steps to creating a rich future for you and your partner. Let me put you on the on the let me just surprise you, Tafadzo, here. Put you on the spotlight. If the writer is talking about 9 steps to creating a rich future for you and your partner, can you guess what, any of those steps could be? I know you'll get the answer. What could be any of these 9 steps that he's talking about? I know you haven't, um, read the book, but I also know that you know quite a lot about finances, Tafazo. So if you think about smart couples in terms of how they manage their finances, what could be one of the steps that the writer is actually talking about in terms of creating a rich future?
I would like to think budgeting together would be one of them, which if you're budgeting together, there is definitely good communication between the two of you. So I think budgeting together.
You're spot on, Tafazo. We're not going to give the 9 steps to our viewers, but definitely, in one of his steps, he talked, particularly step number 3. I think it's step number 3. He talks about planning together. If you plan together as a couple, you're going to win, together. And he gives guidelines. He gives quite a number of rules in terms of how you can design your financial plan as a couple. In fact, he talks about 7 rules. So rule number 1 is that your goals should be in tune with your values. So as a couple, you must have values, obviously financial values. And when you come up with your goals, which inform your budget, they should be in tune with your values. Your goals should be precise, detail-oriented, and have a marked finished line. Write down your top 5 goals as a couple, and you should start working on your financial goals within 48 hours of writing them. Get a rough sketch of the money that is needed to finance your goals as a couple. So I just found, his advice very, very practical and very, very useful. The one thing that I liked about this book, Tafazo, it's a very unconventional financial book. It's not boring. It's not full of figures and facts. He is very straightforward. He gives practical, advice. For example, of the 9 steps that he writes about, he talks about, step number 1, as a couple, you must learn the facts about money. And you must also learn about some of the myths about, money. For example, he talks about myth number 1. Many couples think that where there is love, there are no fights relating to money. So if a couple is fighting about money, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't, love, each other. Myth number 2, money has little to do with how much you love, each other. I think money enhances love, Tafazo. And then he talks about another myth there. One needs money to make more money. I think it's a myth that we have dispelled. You don't need money to make more money. He talks about another myth, for investment, you need a big amount of money. And then another myth is not talking about money in a relationship is a good idea. And then he says, look, right from the time that you are dating, you should start talking about money unless you wish to die broke, which I found, very, very, useful. He's got great ideas in his book, such as planning a money debt. So, couple have got date nights, they plan dates together. And he says, look, you must have a money date where you discuss your budget together as a couple. There are quite a number of things that I learned from this book, which also are related to what we will be talking about, together, today. For example, one of the things that I learned is that it's very important as couples to have open communication about finances. So you can't hide financial issues from each other. both partners should take responsibility for planning, organizing, and keeping track of finances. What we see most of the time is that one partner takes the lead in terms of finances, and the other partner is clueless about what is happening. And when that partner is not there, sometimes the wheels can come off very quickly. I think the heart of this book is that couples should plan and work together as a single unit for a healthy relationship and for a secure future. It's consistent with my understanding, Tafadzo, of what marriage is all about. I think as a couple, we can do more financially than as individuals. Where there is unity, where there is oneness, it's actually possible to do, quite a lot. You have to self-analyze your priorities in life and determine where you are spending the most money. So your spending should be in line with your priorities. You don't need a lot of money to start planning, investing, and saving. He speaks about some of the things that we have already been saying in this short Tafadzo. Keep, an emergency fund. It's better to plan for long-term goals instead of running after temporary, desires. So I thought it was a good book. It's all about being transparent, being open with each other as a couple, and planning together. And I think if we do that, we will limit instances of financial abuse in relationships, Tafadzo.
Thank you, Temba, about that. I will definitely look out for those books and hear what they advise for myself. What to you is financial abuse, and how can one tell that you're in a financially abusive relationship?
So I want to tell you two stories in answering that question, Tafadzo. The first story is something that I experienced when I was growing, as a young person. The second story is about what I read only a year ago. So let me just narrate the first story. When I was growing up, Tafadzo, we got to understand about our aunt. She had done very well professionally. She was working as an executive assistant, elsewhere, and she ended up earning more than the husband. But what we got to understand would happen in their marriage is that the husband would actually go to where she was working and would actually demand that the pay slips of the wife, be given to him. And he would actually, make sure that the funds would be deposited in his bank account and would actually control everything to do with finances, although he was unemployed. And I found that to be very, very sad. So you had a situation where the person who was literally earning the money, he had no control of their finances. He had no say in how the finances would be, would be spent, and the husband would be, literally, dictating how things would happen, although he was not working, and most of the time he was actually, employed. The other story that I would want to narrate, and both these stories, say something about financial abuse, Tafadzo, especially in relationships. I got to understand about a woman who was working as an accountant. I think the context in which the story was being told in a newspaper was a situation where she had committed fraud. And, when they were asking her why she had committed fraud, because she had stolen something like 28 million from the company that she was, working for. She used to work there as an accountant, and she stole this amount of money, obviously, over a number of years. But when they asked her what they had used the money for, it came to light that the husband was actually encouraging her to steal the money from the company and transfer the money, part of the money to his bank account because he was starting a business and he needed the business to be, funded. So the wife would then steal the money from the company, transfer it to the husband, and nothing came out of that business. But the husband would give excuses such as, their business is not doing well. Can you transfer more money? And in the name of love, this wife would be transferring all these large amounts of money. So these stories tell something about abuse. Abuse can happen to both men, and women. Here we're talking about, because all forms of abuse, involve, power and control in a relationship. So when we're talking about financial abuse, we're talking about instances where, one party in a relationship seeks to control, everything to do with finances. And in some case, they may actually want to sabotage the other party. There have been instances where one, partner in a relationship would actually go and accumulate debt that would expose, the couple to, to more debt, or would even force the one partner to acquire more debt in their name. So when you look at all those instances, they are basically instances of, financial abuse. As you indicated, Tafadzwa, we talk most of the time about domestic abuse. We talk about emotional abuse, but financial abuse is very, very, real. In fact, it's one of the, let me just say, one of the most powerful methods that abusers use to keep a victim trapped in an abusive relationships. I've also come across instances where somebody is being abused physically, but they are afraid to leave a relationship because they have no financial means to sustain themselves. In fact, they actually have been instances that I'm aware of where one partner leaves a relationship, but then after some time goes back. And the reason why they have gone back is because they can't put food on the table. The abuser was responsible for putting food on the, or on the table. So financial insecurity, according to the study that you have cited, Tafazo, is one of the top reasons why women return to to an abusive partner. So I guess in this show we want to just get to the bottom of why financial abuse happens in a relationship, and how we can actually, let's just say, detect financial abuse. So probably I can move on to that topic, Tafazo. What are the warning signs of financial abuse? Obviously, there are many warning signs, but all the signs boil down to one partner seeking to control how things should be done from a financial point of view. I'm not talking here about, couples rebuking each other about overspending. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody controlling, having controlling behavior as far as how, money should be used, and they don't consult the other partner. So when you see an instance where somebody is over controlling, shared resources, and shared assets, it could be an indication of, financial abuse. We've also had instances, like I said, where somebody goes to the extent of sabotaging, the place of one's employment. So there have been instances where the abuser goes to the, place where the partner is employed, and they try to sabotage them, so that they don't get the source of income that they have. So that's a warning sign there, around, abuse. Abuse can also take the form of, misleading financial information being given to the other partner. So there have been instances, of one partner accumulating debt, and they don't tell the other partner that that's what is actually happening. There have been instances of, one partner opening secret accounts, and they don't tell, the one partner that they are opening, secret accounts. So I think those are warning signs in terms of whether you are experiencing, financial abuse. It's things like controlling the purse string. I believe in independence, obviously within agreed, parameters. It's instances where the abuser demands, that you ask for permission before spending money. And here we're talking about small amounts of money. Somebody wants you to complete elaborate documents, for them to approve. It's instances where somebody becomes very enraged, over money. And sometimes they can engage in abusive words. It's instances where somebody withdraws their support. Here we're talking about paying child support, paying critical expenditure just to fix you. We are also talking about, limiting your access to your own funds, criticizing every financial decision that you make, as a person. We are also talking about instances where some people can have double standards. If you had instances in a marriage where one partner has got the license to spend, but when you try to spend in the same way as they are spending, then they criticize you. It's as if you also do not have the right to do so. So if you're experiencing all of these things, it could be an indication of financial abuse, Tafazo.
Thank you very much for highlighting the warnings of financial abuse. Before I respond to the question you're going to ask me, I just wanted to find out, like, what would the corporate today have, like, policies? I've had instances where maybe a husband is not providing, or maybe he's using all the money for alcohol. Then the wife calls the company for help. Are there like policies that accommodate that? Like your aunt you mentioned, whose husband was going to take all the money from the company. How did he penetrate in the company? And the policies where one cannot come and get someone's salary? How do corporates protect people in those instances? And on another way, let's say the husband or the wife probably is not bringing money, is not supporting. Then can a partner call the company and ask for help? Maybe maybe asking too much for them to allocate the salary, but is there a way that the corporate can assist?
So the story that I narrated at the beginning happened a long time ago, Tafazo. And it's something that we got to know as we were growing up. We didn't know all the circumstances around that marriage, but I just found it sad. So let me just put it out there that this happened a long time ago. And as you would know, Tafazo, we grew up in a different country to the country that we are living in at the moment. So I'm not sure about how the rules were working, in that country and for that, company, to begin with. But I would want to just narrate another story, Tafazo, which you are well aware of. We run a small business, and in our small business, it happened that, the wife of one of our employees tried to contact me as an employer. And she was telling me a story about, how this particular gentleman was not providing for the family. And all I did there was to just indicate to her politely that obviously the employment agreement that we have is with the gentleman. And so there is no way I can divert the funds and pay them into a different account, because that would be against the law of employment, actually. And that's really the position that corporates, would take. If you would want funds to be diverted, there has to be a court order, supporting that. So it's only in instances where there is a court order, the issues have been ventilated in courts, elsewhere. Can you have, the people in payroll actually, deducting certain amounts and diverting them to certain accounts? So that's the law, because, the individual that you've got an employment relationship with is the individual who then receives, the salary. So these are issues that we've dealt with. But there is a happy ending to that story that I'm narrating, Tafadzwa. If I look at this couple, obviously I went the extra mile to talk to them about their marital issues, and they seem to be, living financially happy after, which is the title of one of our books, today. But Tafadzwa, as we move on with this conversation, obviously, you've read and you speak on this topic of abuse as a speaker. Let me just ask you, a question. If somebody is experiencing financial abuse in a relationship, relationships take very different forms. Maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's something that resembles a marriage. What would be your advice, to them? What practical steps can they take to better their situation?
Thank you for that opportunity to answer a question. Normally, I'm the one asking the question. As we have indicated earlier, that abuse in this circumstance, it could be the wife abusing the husband financially, or the husband abusing the wife financially. And like now we know, there are also house husbands. Things have changed. Sometimes it's the wife working and the husband is at home, and probably he needs to get the allowances from the wife. So I would suggest for assertive communication. Sometimes abuse happens because there isn't like communication, effective communication. I can just take an example of someone, like you gave an example of your aunt. Maybe someone who grew in that family and they saw mommy's money, all of it, the salary being taken by daddy. And maybe to them, it was normal. Or maybe they saw mommy asking for every cent from daddy. When you're growing up, things were a bit different. And to them, that's how they thought, maybe they liked it when mommy had to ask for every cent from daddy. So when you get married, you're not getting married to someone who has the same background with you. So if that person, the other person is not happy with that scenario where they have to ask for money, sometimes communication will actually help. Because sometimes your partner doesn't know that you're not okay with whatever they are doing. So you need to make them understand that you prefer maybe where you're given an allowance or you're allocated some money, maybe for dailies, then you buy so that you have at least some form of freedom. So if you don't communicate, someone may be thinking you're okay with it. So you need to communicate your preferable way of managing the finances. And I think in one of our sessions, we also discussed having a miscellaneous section in your budget. That miscellaneous section where you agree as partners that maybe we give you 1,000 rands for your own use. And with that 1,000 rands, you don't have to report or ask Like for women, maybe you want money for your hair, for your manicure, for your pedicure, or maybe you just want, when you get to a mall, if you find a nice dress, you just buy without having to call your husband that and ask for money. So that also helps if you have a miscellaneous amount where the husband has his miscellaneous amount, because maybe also the husband also has his own needs, which he might not necessarily have to call the wife and ask for permission to use. So that also helps. And setting boundaries. Sometimes you need to set boundaries in your communication, but setting boundaries only works when you know that something is wrong. So it comes back again to communication. When there's communication and maybe you've communicated that you're not happy with the way the finances are being run, you feel controlled. And if someone keeps on doing, then you have to set boundaries where one has to respect that you're an individual, you're entitled to that freedom, where at least you don't have, it can be quite hectic to be asking for money every day, especially for small things like bread, milk, and you know, especially as women, sometimes you're walking in the mall, you see cover bed, or and you're the one who knows that maybe the bedding is needs to be updated. So sometimes to be calling your husband to say, oh, I'm at the shop, I want to buy a duvet or whatever, it may be hectic. So you can buy, as long as it's within the miscellaneous budget. Then the husband must understand that sometimes the wife is not buying things out of irresponsibility, but they're buying because there's need. And some things, it's a woman who knows, especially if she's the one who runs the household, or the everyday thing. So you need to set boundaries, especially if someone continues and have raised an issue. If you also need to be financially literate, like in this day, there's so much information about being financially illiterate. Sometimes being abused is because you're not just financially illiterate. You just don't know. We have been talking a lot on this in these sessions about investments, about saving, about emergency accounts. I know one of the speakers said you can't have an account that your partner doesn't know. But maybe I heard of a speaker last week who was saying they had different approaches to managing finances. His wife is a saver, like a real saver, and he's a spender. And one thing that the wife did was to take some money and save on the side. There was a time when he really needed money, and they were there, and the wife said, I've got some money somewhere, which I saved for you. And when he saw the amount that the woman had saved on the side, he really appreciated, because it was a large amount. So I think the having a side account, if your partner is irresponsible with money or is not a good saver, is the transparency, because this woman was not hiding the money to use it for personal use, but they were hiding the money for the good of the family. So it still comes back to transparency. And you can only invest when you know how. And with these days, you can go on YouTube, you can read books. There's so many books there. We've been talking about investments on this page. You can even visit our YouTube account and go through all the sessions we have gone through, and you work on yourself. And investment, you don't have to start with $1 million. You can start with how much, maybe with your miscellaneous amount that you get. Instead, maybe if you know that you have challenges with finances, instead of using the whole 1,000, you can spare 500. You invest that 500, you use 1,000 for your manicure, pedicure, and maybe manage the hairstyle that you have, because you know you've got an issue. So there's so much information out there that you cannot afford to be financially illiterate in this day. It's just you committing to developing yourself, to growing, and to improving yourself. And you, as I said earlier, maybe your partner is being abusive, probably because of just ignorance. So when he knows that you are illiterate, they may actually respect that. So, and another way is also is to consult a financial expert for help, for assistance. If you see maybe you want to be financially literate and you feel you're being controlled financially, you can approach a financial expert who can help you or manage your finances and how to maneuver around without you maybe controlling the other partner. And maybe when you are literate and you've been helped by the financial expert, it actually helps your partner maybe to also go along with you and meet the financial expert. Then you grow together, then you change. So some of these issues of financial abuse actually happens because maybe you're not working on it and finding ways to maneuver it around. So another way is also to look at yourself. You know, sometimes when you start a relationship, maybe someone is so trusting, they've given you an account, the money is there, then you don't use it wisely. So sometimes you also need to look at yourself as a partner, that what happened, that is if you started well and there was transparency in your relationship and you were trusted with the finances and there was no control. Then if someone changes and they start controlling, you need to also look what happened, what changed, and how can I improve on it instead of just accusing the other person of being controlling, and which also goes back to communication. Sometimes when you're checking your why, when you're looking at yourself, the why, you also need to understand where the partner is coming from. So you can communicate and find out why and what changed and how can it be resolved. And also, with the financial expert, they can also help you manage your financial habits. That is, maybe if you lost it at some point, you were trusted with finances, then somebody changed and they're now controlling the finances. You may want to be helped with the financial habits, how you can change, how you can improve. People acknowledge change. When you change, if the person is just is a good person, they will notice the change and they'll probably also change for the better of the relationship. You can also start a business. You've been being encouraged here to start a business, and starting a business doesn't mean you need to start big. You can start small and you grow. Then you start also generating some finances. Maybe those small things they've been complaining about, that it doesn't give you money for manicure, pedicure, buying your own clothes or investing. If you start your business and you get some money, sometimes you may actually realize that the partner, I've heard many people say, especially women, where the husband says, okay, your money, this small money that you're getting from your business, it's yours. We can just use my money. That is if the relationship is working. But you can start your own business, your side hustle, where you can use that money instead of asking for money for bread, for milk, for small things. You start using that money from your business. That hopefully there will be profit. So yeah, I'll stop there for now.
You've said quite a lot there, Tafadzo. But I think very significant points that you have highlighted. You've spoken about assertive communication, setting boundaries, educating yourself on finances. In addition to what you have said, just to add 1 or 2 points, I think it's very important if you are experiencing financial abuse to get help, get support and get help. And it would be great if you as a couple can actually get help. Tafadzo, in this week, we got to know that there are actually specialists called marriage recovery specialists. These are people that assist people when they go through tough challenges in their marriage or in their relationships. I think the one point that we want to highlight there is that financial abuse is a no. And couples should get help if that is happening. And, the one partner can actually draw a line and say, look, this is not acceptable. So get help. There have been instances where the abuse has escalated and where one couple has actually used the other couple's personal information to get more debt So in those instances where the abuse has escalated to, extreme levels, it becomes very important to protect your personal information. It becomes important to regularly access your credit reports so that you are in control of what is happening. There have been horror stories of one couple actually, taking advantage of the relationship to get more debt in the name of the partner who's got, income. So have access to your credit reports, monitor what is happening, there. The other thing is that it's always important to prepare for the future. Obviously, in an ideal situation, Tafadzo and I always encourage couples to plan together, to be transparent, and to the extent possible, even have a joint account where we can spend, in a way that is transparent. As Tafadzo has indicated, arrangements differ from couple to couple, but I think transparency becomes very, very important. Where abuse has escalated, I've got no problems if the other couple actually prepares for the future and starts hiding the money, elsewhere to prepare for an exit, route. Got no problems with that, especially if we have tried to go through counseling and this abuse is actually persisting. Because what normally happens in most cases is that, financial abuse is actually one part of it. It's normally accompanied by emotional abuse, by physical abuse, and therefore we need to, to put an end to all of these things. But it's very important that whoever is the victim gets support, gets advice, from people who are independent and who are experts in advising. Tafadzo, let me put you on the spot before we move on. I normally get this question from many people. When we are dating, what is the best arrangement in terms of marital contracts? Should we be married, out of community of property, or should we have a prenup agreement where each couple accumulates their assets? I'm getting quite a lot of questions around, this subject, where people seem to be, criticizing marital contracts where we are married in community of property. In community of property, the arrangement where we share our property, as a couple. What's your view, Tafadzo? I'm just interested in your view.
Well, I'm married in a community of property, and for me, if all things being equal, because you are coming together as a couple, hoping to build your things together, and hoping that all things will work in the long term. So if you are going to build together, then there should be that oneness, and that trust. Because normally what's making people now prefer the out of community of property is because now there's a lot of divorce. There is a lack of trust. So when someone gets in the marriage, they already have an exit strategy. When we got married in our days, when we didn't get married with an exit strategy. Even when I remember when we used to go to those kitchen parties, you'll not be told of an exit strategy. You will be told that you are in there for life, and we are going to grow and they are going to do things together. So I think now people are managing risk, because when people have built everything together, when they now want to divorce, it's a lot of work to distribute these things, and sometimes it takes long. There's a lot of emotional pain in it. Maybe someone would have paid maybe the bond mostly on their own, because they're saying we are supporting each other. Then when this person wants to move out, then you're now sharing everything. So it comes back to being me, like now there's a lot of selfishness. People are not selfless. When we were taught about marriage, we're taught to be selfless. Even when someone is brought nothing and the other one has everything, there wasn't this thing of you come in and you know it's our thing. We were even taught that if someone is saying it's my house, already it's wrong, because it should be our house, it should be our money, it should be our car. But now when there's the out of community of property, it's my house, it's my car. So you already have an exit strategy. So I think it depends on people. I've enjoyed the oneness of working things together, where even when we were low, when we lose things, we're losing it together. So there isn't anything like, oh, why did you get into this debt? And now see, I'm also struggling, because you knew that when that person got that debt, they had the family in mind. They meant well. So if there's distrust, that and there's abuse, as we're talking, that someone can get a debt using someone's information for their own benefit, it's all in selfish. You're looking at yourself. So you're protecting yourself. But if there's that selflessness where you're doing things together, you have each other's back, you want to build. Of course, people change as you go along. Sometimes you start and you want to be selfless, then the selfishness comes in. But for me, the community, the marriage and community of property has worked for me, and I would advocate for that. That is, if you believe that the marriage is of God, and it's hard work. It's hard work. People will change, but I believe if God is in the center and you trust God to work it around, there's always a solution. Just like we're talking about financial abuse, there's a way to work it out, to work around it. So it's not something that you can prescribe to people that this is it. For me, I would encourage marriage and community of property. If you're willing, if it's an ever after, happy ever after. If things change, it's fine. You work around it. But I don't encourage people to get in already with an exit strategy, because any small thing, you're ready to leave.
Thanks for your views, Tafadzwa. I find your views very, very interesting and very enlightening. I like the fact that you are not being prescriptive in terms of, this is the direction that couples, should go. But I guess, Tafadzwa, from the books that we've mentioned today, couples that plan together, couples that are transparent with each other, couples that openly communicate, tend to do better financially than couples that hide, things from each other. Couples that do not talk about finances. And it would be a good idea. I think we will be giving good ideas, especially to people planning to go into relationships. Talk about money. Talk about values around money. Even during the dating process, it's possible to see, red flags during that process of whether you're dealing with somebody who is likely to abuse you financially, or not. And that's our viewpoint, Tafadzwa. Couples that plan together, that do things together, are likely to be much more financially successful than couples, that don't. Let me just mention another thing, Tafadzwa. We live in a time where people invent words, and I've seen words being invented. I've seen words like financial infidelity. Sometimes I hear people asking me questions, what is financial infidelity and how is it related to financial abuse? I hear people talking about financial gaslighting. What is financial gaslighting? So maybe we can mention those terms. And I guess the main important thing that we are highlighting there is that whether you're talking about financial infidelity, you're talking about financial gaslighting, these are forms of financial abuse. So for some of you who might be asking, what is financial infidelity? Financial infidelity is where couples lie to each other, about money. And here we're talking about, purposefully, concealing certain information about financing, about finances, from each other. So there have been instances where the one couple thinks that everything is fine, only to find out that the bond payment has not been made for the past 12 months. And when they find out that information, they actually, shattered. And, that's an example of, financial infidelity. Another example of financial infidelity is, you think you're debt free as a couple, but the one partner has been accumulating debt for a long time. And it normally happens because they have got a bad habit, such as gambling. And when you find out that they've been accumulating debt because of this gambling habit, that could be an example of financial infidelity. The reason why we are mentioning this is, there are statistics that actually point out to the fact that financial infidelity can actually be, can have a huge impact on the other partner when they found out, the same impact that, sexual infidelity would have. So we must guard against that in the same way as we guard against sexual infidelity, there. There are also statistics that point out to the fact that, 38% of couples that have been interviewed actually admit that the one partner had a secret account which another person did not know about and which they did not, reveal. So secret accounts could be a form of financial infidelity, as well. People also throw this term of, financial gaslighting. It's a form of financial abuse. Here we're talking about, again, deliberate, falsification of financial information. So this is where you deliberately falsify, financial information to the other party. But the most important thing that we're trying to communicate here, Tafadzo, is that, these are all forms of financial abuse, and people in relationships should guard against these things. I don't know if you would want to add anything to that, Tafadzo.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. We've discussed a lot about the financial hiding of information and falsifying information. Maybe I can just ask a question before we finish. If your partner is a challenge like that one of gambling, how would a couple deal with that? When you spoke about infidelity, where someone probably you think you're out of debt, then you realize you are you're in debt because someone has been gambling. If you have a partner like that, how are you supposed to deal with it?
So statistics have shown that in 76% of the instances where there's been financial, infidelity, it has had, a huge impact on the marriage. And in 10% of the cases, the marriages ended up in a divorce, kind of situation. So let's just appreciate that anything undisclosed could have, in fact, in all cases, has got a huge impact on the other partner. So I think this is where you need help, Tafadzo. It differs from couple to couple. We cannot be prescriptive about these things. So I tend to shy away from giving, general advice in terms of what one should do all I can mention is that seek help. There are people who are specialists in this area who can actually give, partners, help. But initially, when you get to know about, gambling, I wouldn't advise that the first thing be, let the relationship break. I think the first thing should be, seeking help. Let the partner who's got, this gambling habit seek help. And to the extent to which they appreciate the help and they are making progress, I think it's possible for such relationships to be, to be recovered. So the general advice there is that seek help. Seek help. How these things are dealt with, will vary from couple to couple, Tafazo.
Thank you very much. What would be your final remarks?
It's possible to be financially happy ever after. I think that's what the key message that came from, the one book that we recommended today. Smart couples end up richer than they began. And smart couples are couples that plan together, that avoid, certain financial mistakes, Tafazo. Again, in that book that we spoke about at the beginning of the year, of the beginning of this conversation, the writer, actually gives advice on some of the financial mistakes that couples should avoid. I found, some of the advice to be very, very interesting. I'll give you one of the things. The first advice is not to take up a 30-year mortgage, a huge financial commitment for a long time. So he's all about financial independence, Tafazo. And we are also about, financial independence. The other advice that is talking about couples should avoid accumulating credit card debt. Couples should avoid trying to time the markets and trying to speculate with the savings of the relationship. I just found that to be very interesting. But the long and short of, and this would be a parting shot, Tafazo, where there is oneness in a relationship, great things can happen. Whether we're talking about a marriage, whether we're talking about anything that resembles a marriage, I think there has to be oneness for great things to happen, Tafazo. That would be my parting shot for today.
Thank you very much, Themba, for the insightful conversation. Once again, we really appreciate your contribution and the support. We don't take it for granted. For everyone who has been following or who is going to watch later, we appreciate your support. If you're in a financial abusive relationship, don't give up. You can still find help, and that situation can be resolved. And try to implement some of the issues that we have raised here, and also get those books that have been recommended, and see whether the situation doesn't change. Yeah, let's grow together. Your dream is worth fighting for. To contact us, you can contact us on Tafazo Mazibuko speaks.co.za, or you can write a WhatsApp. You can send us a WhatsApp on our WhatsApp number. You can also like, subscribe, and share our YouTube account, The Dream That Is Worth Fighting For. We really appreciate. Let's grow together and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Cheers.